Welcome to the Big Picture Revealed show. And today we have Michael O'Connor, the holistic astrologer for the Extraordinary Healing Arts Academy, returning yet again. And today's topic is the Age of Aquarius.
The Age of Aquarius, in its own way, is slightly a debate among various groups of astrologers and astronomers and so forth, whether it is in fact the Age of Aquarius. I will offer the vote that I firmly believe it is. And the reasons, the measurement of that is mostly synchronistic. There's various people have come along and said, oh, this is the indicator of the beginning of the Age of Aquarius or the other. And they're valid points they're making. But what we're seeing mostly is the synchronicity, the signs of the time. And that really ultimately in astrology should be the loudest voice. What is the signs, which is interestingly linked to how we describe the zodiac signs themselves. Aquarius is the 11th sign. And just a quick understanding that there's actually like 3 zodiacs regarding the 12 signs that we work with in Western astrology. There's 3 zodiacs. The Chinese zodiac is a different zodiac. The Mayan zodiac is a different zodiac. So there's different zodiacs. Okay. And that's always important to remember, because if one says the zodiac, it's kind of slightly wrong. And so there's the 12 constellations of, underline the word of the zodiac, and they are measured in 2 ways. One is the sky is divided into an equal 12. Okay. The other one is that each sign of the zodiac technically, in terms of the constellations, each of the 12 constellations observed are not all the same size. So it's not a tidy division of the circle by 360-degree circle by 12. Aries is small, Pisces is very large. That's very important to understand when you're talking about the Age of Aquarius. The 3rd zodiac is the one we used in Western astrology, which is not based on the constellations of the zodiac at all, actually. And some people have a hard time with that because they think the roots of astrology are in the constellations, but they're not. Not technically. Western astrology honors, and this has always been true with astrologers, it's based on the seasons. So winter solstice, summer solstice, spring equinox, autumn equinox creates the 4 cardinal points. So the way we work is we go, that's where Aries begins on spring equinox, Cancer on summer solstice, Libra on autumn equinox, and Capricorn on winter solstice. So the sign begins then. And Western astrology again and again demonstrates how well it works in terms of understanding who people are. It's in Western astrology and Vedic or Jyotish or Vedic astrology both use the same basic 12 signs, but once again, the Vedic focus on the constellations more specifically, where in the West we focus on the signs based on the division of the year. The summer, the solstices and equinoxes. So it's important to know this basic distinction. There's more to say about what I just said. You can go on and elaborate upon to make it clearer. But when one understands that there's 3 and there's that basic distinction, we get a clear understanding. Now, because Western astrology is based on, it's the only system of astrology in the world that's a sun-centered, or it's not heliocentric. No, that's not quite right. It's a sun or solar system of astrology, whereas the Vedic is a lunar system of astrology. And that's true of most systems, or even Tibetan or in Mayan. They're all lunar based primarily. It's rather interesting. So in the West, the Ptolemy it's actually the Western astrology is more fully an invention at the beginning of this 2,000-year epoch we've been in. We can kind of, with the birth of Jesus and all that kind of story. So basically, since just shortly after that, Western astrology has emerged. And it was refined over many centuries. And that's where we also get the Gregorian calendar. Some people get very excited about how the Gregorian calendar is causing all these problems, but it's actually a calendar that's very precise to the sun's light. And Western astrology is very much an astrology of the sun's light. If you understand that, you got it. It's remarkable how often I say that to people and they don't register. It's like they don't have an app. It's like their brain goes, astrology is based on constellations. I'm like, not Western astrology. And their eyes kind of go like little, I'm thinking, it's not that hard to understand, but they don't really understand astrology at all. So they don't even know where to begin, but they have opinions and theories and they read a book. And it's like, oh my God, I've been dealing with this for a long time, to tell you the truth. Okay, so basically, I just wanted to clearly, just initially create a distinction between different systems. They each can work. They don't really contradict each other, but like languages, they have different grammar, if you like, different principles, different rules.
All right, so here we go. Let me just, so welcome to the Big Picture Revealed show. And today we have Michael Turner, a holistic astrologer for the Extraordinary Healing Arts Academy, returning today. And today's topic is the Age of Aquarius, the turning of the ages. I know that this is something that Michael's quite excited about talking about. And so without any further ado, welcome to the show, Michael.
Thank you, Tyson. Yes, the Age of Aquarius is the big topic these days, and all the signs of synchronicity are there that we are in the Age of Aquarius. Even so, there remains some debate, and the debate is linked to the various zodiacs that are in existence in terms of the 12 constellations that we in the West and the Eastern Vedic tradition of astrology adheres to. I was explaining the synchronicity of the times is showing us all the indications of Aquarius. Aquarius is very futuristic, very revolutionary, about high technology, communications. It's the sign of the two waves represents vibration and frequency. And look at what we're living in, wireless, an ocean of wireless wave patterns from radio to every type, but also, of course, the whole internet and cell phone tower. We're just living in a sea of waves in the air, on the, so to speak, on the airwaves and subtler. But yeah, it's all the synchronicities of Aquarius are here. Now, what determines the Age of Aquarius is an important discussion. And it is good to initially, I'll clarify initially here before I explain what's called the three zodiacs and other factors about the sign of Aquarius, but that an age is 1/12 of what's called a great year. So they're described an age like the age of Pisces or the age of Aquarius can be described as a great age, a great astrological age, to be more specific, or you can call it a great month. It's referred to that way. It's called a great month because it's 1/12 of what's called a processional cycle. Precession itself is a rather debated principle, but one thing's for sure, there is this approximate 26,000 year cycle. Some have traditionally maintained it's 24,000. More in modern cosmological astronomical circles, they come up with 25,910 to be precise is the number, but that itself is open to some debate, but it's about 26,000 years. Okay, that's the entire processional cycle completing around, okay, where you go through the 12 signs or the 12 ages. Now, each age lasts approximately 2150 or 2160 years. Okay, so that's a long period of time for an age to occur. In other words, if it was tidally defined as when did the age of Pisces dawn, it would have been something to the effect of about 150 BC. Okay, now, and there's reason to say that's true. That's the BC time frame. For the age of Pisces is what I mean. And now we have the dawning. That's the key word, dawning. We're right at really what would be very much the crack of dawn. It's like it's still early in the morning, and as the story goes, some are still sleeping. Many, in fact, on that level of thinking, there's a lot of people still. Now, it doesn't make anybody lesser that they're not awake, but, it's just a principle that goes well with what we're seeing in the world right now, this great awakening. So it works well with the great awakening linked to the dawning of the age of Aquarius. So all the metaphors work well. So yeah, we have 2150 years approximately, and it depends. There's a few different opinions as to when the official actual crack of dawn occurred. What was that date? And there's various opinions. I maintain it's very much synchronized with the internet. When the internet was launched, especially when it became public domain, that was very much the signature dawning moment, because the entire internet is very much a reflection of the Aquarian archetype. All right, and that's so. We'll just stay with that. We're not here to have a debate, but I just want to make it clear that there are some who would disagree. The disagreement is based on what's called the three zodiacs. The one zodiac is the 12 constellations. The other, based on the sky divided by 12 equal portions. We're not going to talk about Ophiuchus and the 13th sign and all that, valid as that point of view can be on one hand. The zodiac, since for millennia, has been based on 12. So there's a lot of people who kind of feel that there's some great grand conspiracy about that. It's kind of silly. It's just a model, really, because the Mayan zodiac, for example, is 20. So people get very carried away about, numbers, and 12 there's very good reason why 12 divisions of the sky is what the zodiac is. So they have the 12 constellations, which are not a tidy 30 degrees each. That's very important to understand. They're not. Aries is something to the degree of about approximately 21 degrees of celestial arc, and Pisces is somewhere 39. So there's big differences in size. So if we were to be literally specifically basing the age on the exact size of the constellations, they wouldn't be a tidy 2160 years each. They'd be all kinds of numbers. But so on the other hand, when we divide the sky, the zodiacs, the constellations of the zodiac into a tidy 360 circle by 12, then we get the mean average of the division of the sky. That's very important. Western astrology, quickly, is not based on the constellations, actually. It's based on the division of the year, based on the cycle of the sun from the Earth's perspective. That's very important to understand, and it's more linked to the seasons and the division of the year linked to the sun. So my basic reference to Western astrology is it's this, the astrology of the sun's light. It's very important to say that. Literally, the amount of light that is shown on any particular day of the year. There's a slight variability because there's 365 and a quarter days in a year, not 360 and all that kind of stuff. We'll talk, that's another story we'll leave for another day. There's lots of little technicalities that you can get ironed out, etc. But getting back to it, so the Age of Aquarius is indicated by the synchronicities of our time. According to a purely constellational point of view, we're not in the Age of Aquarius. We're still in the Age of Pisces, but it contradicts the synchronicities. That's the first important thing to consider. Second, the whole notion that astrology finds its origin in constellations is, in my opinion, wrong. It's not like the ram of Aries began in the stars. That was a projection that we created. We projected the theme of the symbol of a ram onto the heavens. It wasn't the opposite way. It's silly to think that. The Chinese don't even, they have a zodiac, well, but it's not based on the 12 constellations at all. It's based actually on the Big Dipper. It's an interesting little story. We're not going to go too deeply into that neither, but I just want to create a few clear distinctions that an age is 2160 years based on a processional cycle of 26,000 years. There's different debates about how precession works also, meaning there's two main schools. One is that due to the Earth spinning on its axis, having a slight wobble, it makes the constellations appear to be moving backwards 1 degree every 72 years. And then we multiply that by 360 and you get the number of 26,000 approximately. The other one is that the sun has a binary twin and they orbit around each other, and that produces this cycle. And the other one that other binary star would be called Nibiru, it so happens. So, but again, that remains in the department of theory. It's important to note, okay? It might be true, we're not sure, but it's not strictly here, there, nor there, neither entirely. So, as it is, despite these various little debates, there's every indication by synchronicity that we're in the Age of Aquarius. And again, all the wave patterns, all the technology, all the futuristic principle, the revolutionary consciousness, it's all here. And the dawning began when the internet became public. And the pre-dawn was when the whole notion of an internet was being born, and computers themselves. One could take it further and further back, but let's just keep it simple. One of the whole theme of the ages is important to understand, and an age, an astrological age, also called a great month, is 1/12 of what's called an astrology. It's called a great year. Okay, it's metaphorically a great year equals about 26,000 years, and it's that number equals the duration required to complete what's called a processional cycle. Precession is something that the ancients even knew about, actually, but modern astronomers study it too, and they've come to agree and recognize what was traditionally considered about a 24,000 year round. They've asserted, no, it's more to the tune of about 26,000. And when you divide 26,000, just to say that number, by 12 signs, you get about 2,160 years. Okay, now that period of time is what is the duration of an age, like the Age of Aquarius. Now, the Age of Aquarius, there is debate as to whether this is in fact the Age of Aquarius for a variety of reasons. It's a bit of a debate between various systems of astrology, specifically that of Vedic and Western. And it's also a different point of view from the standpoint of even Western astronomers as well. So it's a bit of a story to explain some of the technical aspects of what constitutes an age, and then specifically the age of Aquarius. So I'll do that, and then I'll explain some more about the sign of Aquarius itself, which is being represented. And then, we'll just go along that route. And I'll also offer some forecast in the wide angle about what I think the age of Aquarius will amount to. But it is a 2160-year period, so it's a long period of time to make, you can only do so much with your projections about what the future will be like. But basically, the signs, the synchronicities are all there, that we're in the age of Aquarius. Aquarius, once again, is the two wavy lines, and people sometimes mistakenly assert that Aquarius is a water sign, but it's not. It's an air sign. And the waves aren't representing water waves, but vibration, frequency waves. When you understand that about Aquarius, well, you understand. So they're the waves of energy or frequency on the airwaves, if you like. So it's whether, and in this day and age with modern technology, with radio and internet and radar and all of these various technologies that both use the mediums that exist to send signals, but also the very signals that are sent themselves manifest as frequency waves. So we see that, therefore, that first obvious synchronicity of Aquarius is there because we're literally, the whole planet is living in a sea of waves made by technology. And Aquarius is also a sign of the future, of high technology, communications, revolution. It does go into humanism and so forth, and democracy, and so there's different categories for every sign of the zodiac. It's true. On its own, though, the revolutionary principle of Aquarius can be, understood to be, rather aggressive. So Aquarius is hardly a big hug bear kind of sign. It's not like that at all. It's very high principled and very, strong about its position. And if it need be, we will take you to war. It's just not about love and peace. And some people seem to assume, I've noticed over the years, it's okay. So I'll get back to that in a minute. But yeah, it's the technical sides of the age of Aquarius are that when did it begin? And again, there's debate. And the debate is linked to the various zodiacs. And basically, the zodiac of the 12 signs with Aries through Pisces, which is based itself, the zodiac is a division of the year by 12, and it's also a division of the night sky by 12. The division of the year by 12 is demarcated by the solstices and equinoxes, and that actually produces a seasonal type of astrology, which is what Western astrology is. And specifically, the seasonal round is based on what would be called the cycle of the sun from the Earth's perspective. Even though we technically know that the Earth orbits the sun, it's not what we experience. We don't experience the Earth turning so much as we experience the sun rising. So it is a perceptual thing, a little bit of a riddle there. But so the cycle of the sun from the Earth's perspective produces, over the course of a year, produces the signs of the zodiac, of the signs of the wheel of life. And now the constellations are another representation of this wheel of life. And the constellations, there's 12 of them that we focus on. There's a 13th called the Fiacus that does have a sort of a esoteric role, but the zodiac of 12 is ancient, and the number 12 as a used number is very valid and valuable. So the constellations, the 12 constellations, should be understood as being represented in two ways. One is that we can divide the sky of constellations, the night sky, shall we say, by 12 equal portions, but technically each constellation is not an equal 30 degrees. So there's the one that's equal 30 degrees division, that's the mean average. There's the one that's the variable, like Aries is about 21 degrees and Pisces is about 39 degrees of celestial longitude. Okay, so that's how big they are. And so that's those two zodiacs, and the other zodiac, which we use in the West, what's called tropical zodiac, is the third zodiac of this grouping. There's also the Chinese zodiac and the Tibetan zodiac, there, which is probably close to the Chinese, but then there's the Mayan zodiac, and there's different zodiacs, and it's important to note that, and not everybody quite understands those principles. But so now the age, although in Western astrology we don't base the signs, the 12 signs of the zodiac are not based on the constellations of the zodiac, they're not. But that does not mean we do not honor the 12 constellations. That does not mean they're not used and dismissed, not at all. But they're not, the Western astrology is not based on it. But Vedic astrology is, and I'm not well versed in Vedic astrology. There may be some who do honor the exact degrees of each constellation, and there are probably many who, most of them probably go on the mean average. So you can see where there's room for debate here with which ones, which and so forth. But according to the purely constellational perspective, we would still be in the age of Pisces. But remember, Pisces is almost 10 degrees, not quite, almost 10 degrees larger than any of the so it's almost 39 degrees, not 30. So that would make Pisces like something to the tune of 3,200 years versus maybe not that, maybe about 2,700 years versus 2,150, something like that. The math is eluding me, about 2,900, that would be it. But anyway, so when you understand, and this is why I really strongly clarify the importance of the term synchronicity. Synchronicity represents, it reveals what's really going on. And all of the synchronicities of our time are very Aquarian. So on that basis, we're in the age of Aquarius. And if one were to ask, when did it begin? My basic answer, and there's more to it than this, is when the internet was not just conceived, when it was born, and specifically when it became public domain. That's when I would encourage the age of Aquarius began. So basically then we're in the dawning of the age of Aquarius. We're still early in the age, and people are still waking up, but increasingly with each new day, the whole planet is becoming this global village, and that itself is very Aquarian, you know. And so basically that's where we get the rationale as to why it's the age of Aquarius. But I am acknowledging on transparently that I recognize that there's debate, that different various people and groups and so forth will rather staunchly defend that no, it's something else. And debates of those sorts are never finally reconciled because people are very fixed on their opinions. But I'm offering that and sharing with the majority of people just intuitively, instinctively, and also by signs of synchronicity go, ah, yes, we're in the age of Aquarius. So it's very exciting. But the thing that needs to be understood about Aquarius that's important is the temptation is to assume, and I've heard this many times, the age of Pisces was dark and evil, and the age of Aquarius is going to be bright and glorious. Now, there is some validity to that. It's true. There is. It's not entirely false. However, Aquarius is an ironic. First of all, whenever in astrology, to truly understand a sign, you have to think holistically. Okay, holistically. So, in a larger context of thinking, where the age of Pisces is now over, that was what's called a mutable age. In other words, the 4 mutable signs. So in astrology, there's 4 elements and there's 3 modes. The modes are cardinal, fixed, and mutable. The 4 mutable signs, each one represents a different element. Pisces is water, Gemini, air, Virgo, earth, Sagittarius, fire. So we came out of an age that was represented by those 4 signs. Rather important to understand that an age is not, although its main focus is, let's say, the Aquarius, the other 4 signs, or 3 signs, excuse me, that are the fixed signs, this is what's called a fixed age, are Taurus, Leo, and Scorpio. So it can be said that we're not just in the age of Aquarius, more elaborately, more holistically, we're in the age of Aquarius, a fixed sign, and it can be described as the age of Aquarius, Leo, Taurus, Scorpio. If you understand that, now you're thinking holistically, and you should think holistically if you want to understand astrology well. So it gets a little confusing at worst, where people kind of go, okay. So you're saying but Aquarius, it would be seen as holding the king position over the entire age. But although that's true, as the story goes like a clock, the hand does point at different signs at different times. So it's like saying, in the age of Aquarius, the common denominator throughout the whole 2150-year period, the common denominator will be Aquarius. But then there'll be a series of different types of variables of other signs that will overlay on it. It's rather interesting. So it's a bit of a long conversation, but it's just, it moves us away from an overly simplistic perspective. At worst, complicating things, but at best, elaborating, oh, right, it's a full thing. Now, technically, one would put the sign, the main sign, Aquarius in this case, on what would be the 1st house cusp. We would place Leo on the 7th house cusp, Taurus on the 4th, and Scorpio on the 10th. Very interesting. Okay, and then you'd say, oh, okay, so that's the 4 signs. Leo over on the 7th house, that's the house of relationships. And sure enough, just by synchronicity, Leo is the sign of entertainment, performance, and look at the stature of entertainers and athletes on the planet, right? We get this whole full spectrum of those celebrities taking the stage. So they're on the house cusp of Libra, which in a certain type of perspective is the sweetheart house cusp. So the entertainers and the athletes, and this will generally speaking remain true for a long time, I would venture. Okay. On the other hand, there's the age of the principle of Taurus and Scorpio that are strong, and Taurus at the 4th house cusp represents that, positively speaking, the age of Aquarius is about everybody having more abundance than people have ever had before. It's just a very, Taurus is all about the possessions one has. So it's become very focused on that. Scorpio on the midheaven is indicative of a type of centralized authority. It goes rather well with the notion of a new world order, of a central body, of which currently, the whole conspiracy idea is that a very select group of people are trying to grab that ring and rule the world. It's rather mythic. But maybe in time, at least, it'll become more like a shared council. That would be exciting too. So that's a basic intro to what would be the age of Aquarius. It's a fixed age. It incorporates those other signs, and it's about technology. It's about humanism, but it's also about revolution, and it's about democracy. Or one could say also republicanism, like the whole notion of a republic, of everybody takes care of everybody.
So did I get it right that with the age of Aquarius that there's sort of 4 phases that Aquarius goes through, each with a different sort of flavor or focus? Did I get that right with the explanation? Like I sort of got lost in
there's 4 major seasons.
All right.
You can always divide a cycle always by 4. It's like the 3, 9, 6, and 12 on the clock.
So that
always,
would be like the beginning of Aquarius, the dawning of Aquarius, the summer of Aquarius, the winter of Aquarius, the fall. So it's sort of like the rise and fall. Is that what you're saying?
Yes.
All right.
Yes, that's correct. That's correct. That's right. So we're very much in the early spring.
Right.
Spring is symbolic of 6 a.m., spring equinox. So if one were to say, okay, well, what time is it then? And the answer is, well, it may be 10 past 6. It's
right.
not very late.
Right.
It's not very late at all. If 6 a.m. represents the crack of dawn,
yeah,
it's only 10 in this ratio of thinking. Yeah, it's 10 past 6 in the morning. It's really early in the game, and
right.
We're seeing. Yeah, but there's another conversation we haven't had yet. But I'll just hint at it because it's a longer conversation. But there's 2 beginnings of the day. One is 6 a.m., but technically it's 12 midnight. What that means is that the age of Aquarius had its midnight in the Renaissance, by the way.
Whoa.
And all the signs of it are there. Oh yeah. It's like there's 2 ways of looking at it. So when does the day begin? Well, in the morning when I wake up, but technically not on the calendar. On the calendar, it started when you went to bed practically, or shortly thereafter, or generally speaking. So that's a whole other interesting twist of perception that should be understood. And by the way, if one were to do the study and give consideration to that the age of Aquarius began with the Renaissance, they begin to see signs of that. So that's exciting all on its own ground.
Well, that's a long time to wake up.
It's not so much that. The midnight period until 6 a.m. is like a formative period. It shouldn't be necessary. It's like what was going on in the subconscious, so to speak.
Right. So does that mean that we all sort of have an echo of that, or a birthing of a new type of Renaissance at this period?
You could say that, the Age of Aquarius, for example, like the internet can
Yeah.
be seen as very much the fruit of the scientific revolution, if you like.
Right.
And there's other forms of technology, but from the standpoint of the themes of Aquarius, it's more accurate to say that it's the internet than other forms of technology. But one could generally say transportation and communications.
Right.
Those two words are the big two words rather significantly. And so, of course, naturally, by synchronicity, we can see that the age that we're in is determining us. Let me give you an example. There's all kinds of thoughts and theories and feelings and experiences and so forth. We see it out there in the popular social media. But when you're in an age, and if it's truly, in fact, we're in the Age of Aquarius, which I again believe we are, the energy frequency, the archetype of that age will, in a blueprint kind of archetypal way, determine a lot of what we otherwise might interpret to be random and individualistic. It's like we're in the fishbowl, we're in the container, the arena of Aquarius, and all the things that we're going to experience will, over that period of time, will be very Aquarian. So when we say we're in the dawning of the Age of Aquarius, anybody who wants to be back in the Age of Pisces, well, good luck. If you have some crazy notion you want to be in the Age of Capricorn, which is the next age, quite a ways from now, good luck. It's a type of surrender to the flow and adapt.
Yeah, it's bigger than us. We are just part of the flow. There's nothing to resist. There's nothing to overcome. You're in the flood, so to speak, in the flow, and get used to it.
Basically, that's right. And the human story, the interaction of people, the drama of life, the reality of duality and conflict, and that won't go away. And although the Age of Aquarius itself, like any long period of time of centuries, so even from the standpoint of the dawning, if we were to talk about the dawning of the next age, the Age of Capricorn, it would be about 2,100 years, maybe a bit more. So we're 2,100 years. Now, the point being that you could imagine that let's say the reins of power are likely to change hands a few times.
Yes, you mentioned something about that this has to do with prosperity for all. It's like abundance will become more. Would you say more abundant, or the possibilities for it, or it's just? I'm thinking of the Aquarian symbol where you have this being, this pouring this pitcher of water, or the waters of life are being poured out in unlimited abundance. Say more about that aspect. Do you see that coming from the technology? Do you see it coming from the rise in our consciousness, or like, is it technological abundance, or is it spiritual abundance, or is it both, or?
Those are extremely good questions, and I think the answer is both. First of all, technology by its very design should provide abundance on the high side of things. We can fabricate a house with in half a day if we had literally all of the means are there. We could boom, 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 do things very quickly because of whether it's factories and or just the ingenuity of very, very good design, basically, right? Good design, the technology of materials, designs, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. We basically, from that standpoint, have overcome any true notion of poverty, starvation, or otherwise. We have even rather significantly, but not entirely, with technology, we're safe from even the ravages of nature in many respects, but not entirely. I mean, if we had a meteor hit the planet, well, that would be serious. Or if there was a polar axis shift, I'm sure that would be serious. So, but by and large, there's a technological defense against nature, and that itself can produce an abundance. So the answer, I think, is yes, abundance is there. On the other hand, you know, the various theme and principle of power and control and privilege always seems to have its way of getting in there. You know, it's human nature of various, you know, for some to feel they're more entitled or they're superior in one way or another, and so on. And besides, you know, everybody, even in the most abundant technological era, everybody can't live in a castle.
Right.
So there's a lot of like, some people would say that, you know, talk about the human experiment. I would talk about the human experience and recognize that, and this is where astrology comes in, by the very design of existence, there will inevitably be an ongoing dynamic of the revolutions of evolution, simply putting it. So it's inevitable that, even though admittedly it would be nice to see things slow down, you know, hey, let's slow the pace a little bit and breathe into what we've done here. But ironically and sadly, the more that we have power, and probably based on historical, you know, old vendettas and old attitudes and beliefs, you know, it's making everything move faster. The competition's going up. It's kind of an ironic thing. So, yeah. I think we'll have, you know, something like, if you get into, you can't help but get into a politic mindset. Like, you know, one could get into, okay, socialism. The virtues of socialism are that, you know, universal, global, or it's called global welfare, global Medicare. It's really wonderful. I mean, most people would go, hallelujah, right? And so on. And I would. And just the basic, you know, all the fundamental human needs are there. On the other hand, it just so happens, for various reasons, whether it's various groups of people or based on certain religious beliefs or something, there's always, it's hard to please all the people all the time.
Right.
So, you know, anyway, that's a general projection. And we're, the negative side of us, any system, it's kind of an ironic thing. We'd all like things to sort of just continue in a certain pace and not be always the revolution of evolution, wouldn't be so dire all the time. But on the other hand, if you don't have agitation to the system, corruption has a way of setting in, it would appear. You know, it's for all kinds of kooky reasons. Now, I'd like to think that I'm wrong, and we will, as most idealistic, utopian, like minded thinking would have it, will come around a corner, and well, we'll be more in a state of shared resources and abundance and brotherhood, and all that. And, you know, maybe we will arrive at that place, you know. I think we could. I'd like to think we will. I don't think it's going to happen in the next few decades, right? I mean, there's no clear indication of that at all. As a matter of fact, just the opposite, unfortunately, because now the power is there, but the old mindsets are right on its heels.
So this is the clash of paradigms that you were mentioning about in previous shows, that this will be a time where different views of the world will be in conflict with each other. There's so the rise of Aquarius and more egalitarian and more humanistic or more interactive or cooperative. I don't know if those are the words you would use. There will be a backlash, I think you said, that will come from the status quo that will want to hold that back for various reasons. So that this next period in this crack of dawn is a bit of a struggle as the age starts to be born. In other words, there's new ideas coming and new ways of being, and a revolution is afoot, so to speak, which is unstoppable, and there'll be those that want to stop it. Is that correct?
It's very much yes. It sounds a little cynical or pessimistic at worst, but it's very egoic for us to want the world to be like a big Club Med, a big wonderful lollipop, you know, a big beautiful, lovely, simple, no effort, robots do the labor, we just sip the cocktails kind of world, right? But it's really the school, I believe. That's my belief isn't absolutely final, but I tend, from everything I've observed and come to understand, the world is a zone of learning for the soul, and conflict is a key component of the game, because and then also in one of our previous episodes, I talked about soul levels and soul types. So you'll always have a full spectrum of levels and types and paradigms, and invariably by the nature of ego itself, one rejects often or is prejudiced against what one's not.
Right.
Even the least prejudiced people, the most humanist scientist is prejudice against other branches of science. It goes on and on and on. So yes, I think the reality of the game is that invariably conflict. It's just like if we don't have conflict, I have a saying, I wrote an article called Life Without an Edge. If there's no edge, there's no glory, there's no purpose, it's a different type of suffering. There's no escaping that one way or another, that in the game, in duality, in materiality, in this dimension, there's this interactive dynamic. Now, very idealistic people don't want to believe that. They want everybody's hugging each other and we're having a 2,000-year-long festival.
Right.
And we're all loving and hugging. And I mean, okay, that sounds nice. But it's very, I think personally, they don't maybe understand is that that's the ego. Because the ego wants everything comfortable, familiar, and secure. And it's kind of the ego on its own is very much like hedonistic. So it's kind of funny, really, you think about it, because I know some people who think that way, and they're practically aghast. Somebody would think that it should be, there would be conflict. They're just like, you're wrong. This is wrong. They're so idealistic. It's just to the moon, And I think to myself, and you're dangerous actually, because it's that exact thinking that's very dangerous. Because you will want to make sure that you assert nobody wants to, well, you're not, unless you're kind of very imbalanced, you're going and picking a fight. Okay, I'm going to go pick a fight for nothing. Okay. But the opposite is, I'm going to defend this status quo. That if you try and do that, you can't help but create a type of tyranny.
Yeah, absolutely. I read an interesting series of books talks about us humans as the explorer race, and that in this school of life, we're all going to be graduating from planet Earth, and part of our mission is, as intergalactic space travelers, will be to be somewhat of disturbers. One could say, the shit disturbers in the galaxies. And the reason why is because certain societies or evolutions of consciousness get stuck, like you were saying, in homeostasis, and they feel so much, so comfortable in their bliss that there's no dynamic growth. And it takes somebody like us to show up from another planet that has this conflict as part of who we are and how we learn, to shake things up so that there can be another evolutionary step. I found that really fascinating, which is really basically what you're saying. It can't be all unicorns, lollipops, and rainbows. It could be, but we are then on a plateau as far as our own spiritual or evolutionary growth is concerned. We've arrived and we would become complacent. So certainly in the dualistic world we live in, it is that tension, that conflict that allows us to continue to grow and to have opposing ideas and concepts that we can push against and grow ourselves. So I just found that an interesting concept, because I don't know about you, but the concept of utopia sounds pretty darn good to me. I just don't know which planet it is on and where I can get to it.
I think, it's very natural for us, and this is the beauty of the human soul. It's very natural for us to want the good, and it's very unnatural for us to not want the good.
Mm-hmm.
There is different psychological types, though, kind of like leaders of the pack and followers, and the aggressive versus the meek. And so these aren't merely, in my opinion, these are not merely sociologically conditioned states. These are built-in part of the plan. You can see it in body types, from beautiful to not so to less so, to physical prowess to zero coordination, and we see it everywhere. And that's why that, the earlier discussion on soul levels and soul types becomes so rather compelling as an argument. And so idealistic thinking is valid and good. Acknowledging that it's idealistic is even better, but aspiring to it is, I think, natural. But invariably, we're going to meet opposition as others who have different opinions about how that, either what it looks like or how we should get there, will arise. So while we enjoy, I think this is where it comes to a kind of be here now principle. Enjoy and honor your virtuous intention to want to bring about a higher, better world, and it's a good thing. It's a healthy attitude, but don't get too carried away and be here now, because it's an interesting story. This is Eckhart Tolle is doing some good work out there, reminding us, don't assume that the future, like, for example, like others have said this too, a kind of a Carlos Castaneda story, live as though death is stalking you.
Right.
Because you're not sure how, far into the future you will go, for one. So yeah, there's a lot of little conjecture, like little debates like that. And it's a little bit getting away from the specifics of the Age of Aquarius, I appreciate. But what I basically have said is that the age is just getting going. The core common denominator of Aquarius is there. To fully understand the archetype of Aquarius, one requires a very holistic perspective. And if you assume that Aquarius is purely and solely benevolent and other signs are less so, you have it wrong. Because every sign really which slice of the pie is better than the other slice of the pie? And the answer is none. They're just different. They all have a different color, if you like. So Aquarius invariably, as an archetype, is beautiful, as are all the others of the 12 signs, for example. But human beings embodying these archetypes also have different levels and types and lessons. So it just really addresses that while the Age of Aquarius will be technological and it will be marvelous at that level, and we haven't seen anything yet probably, and that's fun and glorious and wonderful, but it also, in the human story, etc., must also contend with the fact that the planet is a school. And we probably will never, there's good reason to say we'll never really arrive at a consensus on one particular thinking or way of doing things.
Well, we'll have to hold it at that. That's an exciting topic. Much more to say about this. And that's it for now on the Age of Aquarius. Thank you ever so much, Michael. Great discussion.
You're welcome, Tyson.
And
yes, thank you.
We'll return yet again for further discussion. So bye for now.
Okay, have a wonderful day. Thank you so much.
The Big Picture Revealed show is sponsored by the Extraordinary Healing Arts Academy, hosted by Facebook Live on the Extraordinary Healing Arts Academy Facebook page, produced by The Wellness Show, www.thewellnessshow.ca, and stay tuned, same place, same time. See you next week. Bye for now.